Hey everybody, welcome back to Blushing Nerd Tarot. Thought I'd hop on today to do a little preview um, of sorts. Just getting ready for the release on July 5th of the new Alchemy deck, the fourth in the series from Kim Kranz that started with the Wild Unknown Tarot. And pretty excited to get this fourth deck. It's If you've seen my other videos, you know this is all new to me, even though it's been around for quite a while now. I just recently got the Wild Unknown along with, the Animal Spirit deck and the Archetypes deck. So the whole system is new to me. So I've been experimenting, working with it, and not as much the archetypes as Animal Spirit and the tarot itself. But what I'd like to do and what I've been doing is just kind of putting some thought into what it would be like to work with all four of these decks together, but being somewhat realistic in um, knowing the fact that these are all fairly new to me. I didn't want to go even to three at this point, but we only have a couple of days. So um, the 5th is Tuesday, and that's when the Alchemy deck will be arriving. So I'd like to be prepared for that. I'm going to do a walkthrough that day when I get the deck. And then I would like to work with it and possibly, I've mentioned too, I'd like to get a few other people and maybe do a live and each person manning one of those decks, possibly. Just a thought. So here we have something that kind of intrigued me when I first was reading this book. The idea of humans and animals sort of intertwining and together leading to either a vision of divinity or they themselves contributing equally to the experience of divinity. And it got me thinking, there are some spreads in here, um, but and there's some spreads mentioned in the other decks or the other books as well. Um, Shuffling and cutting, card a day. We have the past, present, future, path and the obstacle, relationship spread, and so on, which is great. But visually, I was struck by this image and thought, wouldn't it be fun if there was a way to use these two decks? The tarot representing humans, and then of course this deck, the animal spirit representing the animals, and to make a spread inspired by that diagram of that sort of double helix kind of uh, spiral. So that's what I'd like to do is just play with that idea, experiment a little bit, and think about how maybe we could even expand that into other into the use of the other decks as they, as the when the alchemy comes out, and then also using it for the archetypes. um Again, I did a little edge treatment here on my copy, which I rather enjoy. I like the way that ends up adding some pop of color that adds some visual interest that ties in nicely with the themes of the deck because there's so many splashes of color throughout. Uh, and I know there have been changes in this since back in the day when it originally came out. There have been a couple of card changes and things. And I questioned the card stock when I first got it. Um, I have been working with it more, just spending more time with it, shuffling and handling the deck, and although I still feel like the publisher could have stepped up for sure on the quality of the card stock. Um, it's not terrible. It's it's usable. It has a nice sound to it. Sound is part of the experience for me too. The cards do slide nicely. They shuffle pretty nicely. They feel resilient, more resilient than I thought they might be because of those bent edges that they sometimes get from the cutting process in the factory. But ultimately, I think we're okay here. So here's what I'd like to do, and we'll see if we have room for this on. So the humans started on the left side of that. So we'll have the tarot represent the humans, and this would be a you could do apply this to a number of different spread concepts or questions, right? But um, if we think about, even if it's just sort of a day ahead spread, or what should I be mindful of today, is kind of what I'm thinking would be a good use for this. Some people go for or like to use quicker spreads, maybe a two card or even a one card pull for that sort of thing. Um, but I have an idea in mind for how we might think of a division in these three tiers, if you will. Cardstock's the same on the Animal Spirit deck, by the way. At this point with these versions, these have all been purchased within the last month or so, so it's all new. Whatever the current edition and so on, current printing, that's where we are with what I'm experiencing. So I know there have been some variations over the years, at least with the tarot. So the idea of that diagram where the two are intertwined, and that fits neatly with um, how I like to work with tarot and oracle uh, as a combined system. So so what we'll do. So you have to, use your imagination a little bit, but what I'm going with here is obviously just a play on that spiral motif that Kim Cran's laid out in the Animal Spirit book as a conceptual view on divinity being the combined experiences of humans and animals, maybe is one way to put it. So here we have that spiral, right? So that's that's what I'm thinking. So if we think about a day ahead, but specifically in terms of what should I be mindful of? Well, we have a couple of different things we could do here, but I like to think about things. I see my candle went out. I'll not bother with that right now. But we could have the subconscious and the conscious, and then the spiritual, perhaps, would be one way to think about it. And how would that translate into what should I be mindful of today? Subconscious could be the undertones of the day, the things that maybe we should touch base with in ourselves and in our own mind as we're approaching our day. Things that may not be on the surface, at this level in the middle, we would be thinking about, oh, okay, I have to go. I have the vet appointment for the dog, and I have to go pick up groceries, and I have all of these things that are, that make up my day and what I'm facing. Um, but subconsciously, what should I be thinking about, um, that could be impacting all of it, and maybe lending some. Well, it could be just coloring the day a certain way, and this could help at least get us to think about that, right? And then, of course, the spiritual side, maybe these are the aspirations, or um, the other side of the portion we're not thinking of. That um, it may be that this is where we reach out, and we really think about others, and we consider ourselves as part of the whole, rather than being trapped in our own little existence, and being small in that way. So we could go, we could do the tarot first, maybe. Maybe that's a decent way to go. So let's do that. So our first card is Justice. So underlying thing to consider when we get the Justice card, is there a truth that we're denying? Maybe something about what we're going to be facing today that we need to just approach very pragmatically to make sure that we're not coloring anything inappropriately. We're not, by that I mean, we're not putting our own spin on something um, that might not be helpful in the long run. So interesting. I like that as an underlying or subconscious card. So the Hierophant. What the Hierophant could mean here as our conscious level for the day. What should we be mindful of? Perhaps it's understanding that sometimes we need a key to access our best self, and sometimes we are the key. Sometimes we acknowledge that, and if it's at this level, um, then maybe we're ready. Just getting the book. I'd like to see what Kim Krans says about this. That may help clarify what it could mean in this position for us. Mentor seeking knowledge. In its simplest form, the Hierophant represents a mentor or teacher. This card signifies a hunger for knowledge, whether it is in the practical or the spiritual realm. You've come as far as you can on your own. Now it's the time to deepen your practice. Don't hesitate. Join a class, go to a workshop. Don't be afraid of new experiences. A new ceremony or ritual may prove to be both comforting and rewarding. Open your heart, and your teacher will soon appear. So, as we approach the day, if this is the card we pull, then we should be open to those new experiences and recognize perhaps either side of that idea that we may find the key to unlock our knowledge of something, or we may ourselves be that key. We may have that ability to grant that access on our own. And we have the Two of Swords. So, the spiritual realm for today, we see choice, and we see specifically our thoughts, which of course plays nicely in both cases here. We even have a common theme with the sword in our Justice card, the sword that cuts through with clarity. And maybe in this case, spiritually speaking, if we're at that level, what may be going on is that we we have a choice, and we also have the tools to make the right choice. But in this case, I see it as fairly optimistic that it's really not necessarily going to be a bad thing either way. We have some balancing going on here with the Justice card and the Hierophant giving us some confidence and ability to access that knowledge. And then the Two of Swords being in the realm of thought at a spiritual level in this particular spread feels like we're prepared. So let's see what the animal side of this gets us. Camel. And I am going to reference the book for all of these because this is not really a system that you memorize per se. This is, I mean, of course, you work with it enough, you're going to commit some of it to memory. But this is an oracle that doesn't necessarily have. Um, it's less intuitive in terms of interpretation of the art. We do have some things that indicate. Um, we have, of course, the element symbol. We have a moon here that has a blue tint to it. It looks like it's a very dark background. It could be, certainly could be nighttime. I'm sure it is that moon. So, anyway, let's see what Kim Krantz has to say. So, resourceful, independent, knows oneself. The camel can handle absolutely anything, as it carries a wealth of nourishment within. This wondrous creature is self-reliant and handles challenges with ease. Even in the face of excess heat, judgment, or anger, the camel searches inside for their cool elixir of water to calm the situation. The camel represents the ultimate form of bringing opposites into balance, fire and water, and being responsible for one's own reactions. The camel is a wonderful traveler and is especially fond of trips to faraway lands. Calm, content, sparkle in the eye. When out of balance, dehydrated, lacks vitality. So, and it does also say to bring into balance a pilgrimage. So, if you feel at this at this level that your subconscious, as you approach the day, you have that imbalance. We're only talking about a day's time here, but if that's something you continue to struggle with, the suggestion here is that a pilgrimage, which could be any number of things, really, but it can be powerful to take a hike to a specific spot in your favorite park, but it's a place that you feel spiritually connected. That's a pilgrimage of sorts. So in any case, we're given a way to kind of correct an imbalance there in the book. So a camel at this level, again, we have the Justice card, and then we're balancing that quite nicely here with an independent, resourceful card that it says knows oneself. So there's a nice balance there. This feels like a stable base from which to launch our day for sure. So let's see where we go from here. So in the conscious realm, the raccoon. Talented, shadowy, and in hiding. Raccoon energy is at play within all artists to greater or lesser degrees. At best, it indicates talent, tenacity, and skillfulness with a particular musical instrument or creative tool. Its shadow side points to an unresolved issue around self-image and success. Sometimes using a stage name or wearing a mask works in an artist's favor. Other times, it limits creativity. Am I who my audience thinks I am? What if I am ready to grow into something more? Raccoon energy won't let us off the hook until this creative ego fear is resolved. So when in balance, generous friend, exceptional artist. When out of balance, competitive, starving artist. To bring into balance, make new work. I like that. That can That can go a long way to help you resolve a lot of issues if you just kind of go to work, especially in creative endeavors. So, so how does that balance, or how does that work with our Hierophant? So, the raccoon, in a way, um, could lend itself to that sort of guidance and that key to unlocking the knowledge. Perhaps in a way, it's that raccoon energy that is going to help drive us in one direction or the other, by suggesting that, maybe we, if we are a little bit out of balance there, maybe it's really about just buckling down and pushing through on that creative project. Starting a new project, I think, is particularly important in a case where you're stuck on something, because we don't need to enhance that sense of defeat if we're stuck at a certain place in a creative endeavor. There's really very little harm in putting it aside for a short time and cracking on with something else that could end up with a nice feedback loop of inspiration, so that you can unlock and move forward with that existing project. So the raccoon energy, I think, could be really helpful, and it would be something, especially in this case, if we're talking about what's the day ahead or what are things to be mindful of. We may recognize throughout the day, and that's kind of the important point for this, I think, is to, um, maybe even write yourself a little post-it note that has some of those keywords on it, and think of yourself as the Hierophant for the day. And then as you're doing that, look at your reference those keywords from the raccoon card or whatever card may be here, that can help you to focus your energy for the day. So talented, shadowy, and hiding, those are more like traits. So I don't know if that in particular maybe isn't necessarily what we're looking for, but the raccoon energy being, indicating, I should say, the talent, the tenacity, the skillfulness, and just keeping that in mind. You may be just going about your normal business for the day, and you hit a little snag, or something just isn't quite going right, and you think, you know what, that raccoon energy, what would it do in this case? And it would probably, just head off in a different direction. Just understand that there's nothing you can do about the thing that is held up, or that isn't moving right, and you just take a different turn, and off you go, and then come back to it later. And sometimes that's all we need, is just the permission to do that. And I think, having that paired with the Hierophant's kind of a neat combination there. So what do we have with our spiritual side to go with the Two of Swords? Oh wow, look at that. We have the Panther, those eyes. So we have a dark theme going on here. It's all happening at night. Raccoons come out at night. Panther hunts at night. The camel is, crossing the desert at night, lit by that blue moon. So let's see what the Panther has to say. Go with our Two of Swords. Okay. Annihilation of the unnecessary. Purging. The Panther won't stand to see our growth or energy stagnate. Instead, it pounces into our lives and causes all kinds of havoc, with the ultimate intention of bringing us toward more fulfilling lives. It's unexpected, uncomfortable, and sometimes feels devastating. But after all the dust clears, it's easy to see the Panther's wisdom at work. We've all been through these experiences, and they've made us better people. Trust that the Panther's journey always leads to a brighter place. When in balance, brave production, or I'm sorry, brave and productive. When out of balance, self destructive. To bring into balance, get rid of the unnecessary. That can be a very healing process. If you recognize that you are burdened by unnecessary things, purging that can be a really great thing, very healing. Um, so, but here we are in the spiritual realm. We're facing this Panther card uh, that can't stand to see our growth or energy stagnate, and we're paired with that Two of Swords and that element of choice that is pervasive throughout all of this. Really, um, we have an interesting path laid out for us for the day. So, what do we do with this sort of layout? It's we have the tarot elements and the oracle elements, and I think these could work well together. It's something I'd have to work with more to get a real good sense of how aligned they are, at least for me and my type of reading. Um, I think it's there. I think maybe what would be helpful is to really get a better base understanding of the book content for the animal spirit, because I think some fluency with that may end up allowing for a more intuitive experience here. But I do feel like there's an interesting energy at play when we lay them out this way, and we think about the different stages, or it could be the stages of progression, or it could be, as I was working through it, the subconscious, the conscious, and the spiritual. Or there's a few different things we could do here with this type of spread, but it's not. Um, we're not reinventing the wheel here. This is a common. I think this is a fairly common layout. This might be something um, that people use, either strictly with tarot or with oracle. But the combination is nice. It gives us a nice path that has a good balancing feel to it. So I think this is a fun way to go. And then, how could we then? That's the next question: is how then do we integrate something like the archetypes deck and or the upcoming alchemy deck? I think I am properly signed up for the workshop that Kim Kranz is going to do with the deck. If you do a pre-order of the deck and then follow, there's some links on her website that I think you have to provide some sort of proof of purchase for the pre-order. If you do that, I believe that's all. I mean, I've signed up this way, and I hope it turns out to be the case. That you're then going to receive a link for a workshop that you can attend with Kim Kranz to talk about the deck. So that's pretty exciting. Anxious to see how that goes. It'll be really neat to work with a creator. Not something I've had the privilege of doing before, so I'm pretty excited to see how that goes. Um, but I'd love to think about how these four decks can work together. Um, when we pull something like this, the empty room, how does that relate to our overall reading here, our experience? Let's see. Let's just see what the book has to say, and if we can just take an extra moment here, I'd like to get an idea. So the empty room, the vortex, the abyss, the nothing. The empty room haunts us all. It is the universal and all too frequent feeling of lack of wanting, of the craving to fill ourselves with something, anything. We too often attempt to remedy the discomfort of the empty room by any means necessary, leading us to a culture of more. Ironically, the empty room is filled to the brim with potential, yet we perceive it as not enough. This card is a cry for patience, for sitting within the barren walls of not knowing, for awaiting true vision and purpose before attaching to what we should do next to save our outward appearance. Be with the nothingness. Be with the impatience. The empty room has immense power. Let others wonder what you are doing. If you can settle into the magic of emptiness, you will soon hear its whispers of wisdom. That's a great message. Spaciousness, potential, and possibility versus addiction, insatiability, more for more's sake, and go deeper. John Cage's 433. So, archetype of the empty room is also portrayed as the hungry ghost, always feeding and never satiated. Bumping my microphone here, apologies. A day of silence is a surefire way to harness the power of the empty room. Yeah, that's true. It's funny. The idea of an empty room can be, it has like a destabilizing feeling to it if we are not prepared. If we don't get ourselves to a state where we're comfortable with that emptiness, and that I think is an important exercise. I think that can do a lot for your spirituality and for just as a meditative exercise to just be okay with the emptiness, because a lot of times that's how we learn to be okay with ourselves. And if we're okay with ourselves, we're often better for others. So I think I'll leave it there. Very interesting. Very anxious to work with the fourth deck when it arrives, and I'm anxious to hear your thoughts. So thanks for stopping by, everybody, and take care.